Just a moment. Hmm. All right, we're going to get started, and um, I don't think that it's going to be recording, but oh well, we'll um, we'll do what we do. So, good afternoon, good evening, good day, whatever part of the world you may be tuning in. Um, Help me. Um, um, as you know, this is the Stroke Folk show, and I have a special guest, and I want you to help me welcome Dr. Tim Banker. Hello,
Mhm.
Tim.
Hello, Brent. How you doing?
Awesome. And of course, many people don't know our relationship goes back for years,
Yeah.
but it um, I have let people fall away when after the strokes. So I regret that, but I'm starting to reach out and reconnect, and I was so happy that you were available today to talk about your experiences with something that is near and dear to your heart.
Yeah. I love being with you. Love reconnecting.
Yes. So, what can you tell us a little bit about your background for my audience?
Well, like you, most people know me as a veterinarian. I don't know that people do know you as a veterinarian now, though, Brent. That's interesting.
I don't make a big deal about it. I'm very much a veterinarian, but I focus on the stroke thrivers, um, which is what I'm doing in this season of my life.
Yeah. Well, most people in my adult life would know me as a veterinarian. I graduated from Ohio State University in 1974. Um, the kind of the immediate sequence of events there is took state boards, had my first child, and then went into general practice. So it's
Wow.
like within 9 days I was in practice. And I was a general practitioner most of my career. I ended up practicing for about 47 years. um, I went into ownership of a practice in 1978 with a classmate of mine. And in the veterinary field, I've always been somewhat of what I would consider a pioneer. Um, about 1980, two things happened that I think were unique to my part of my career, where I was interested in finding something I was passionate about because I had been doing referral orthopedic surgery. And when the veterinary school opened up, I knew that most of my clients were going to be, or my patients were going to be going there. So I looked for something that I could get excited about, and I met Chuck Williams and Gary Beard, who were pioneers in veterinary dentistry. Got excited about that. And long story short, Chuck mentored me. I got interested in advanced dentistry, got into the kind of like the organized veterinary medicine part of veterinary dentistry in veterinary medicine, eventually became an adjunct professor at North Carolina State University and was teaching students dentistry there. But in 1980, I was also really frustrated by, I didn't know how to manage a practice. And
Mm.
at that point in time, there was no organized veterinary practice management. So I started going around the country, going to meetings, and I met people within our field who were pioneers in the area of practice management. I met Owen McCafferty, I met Ross Clark, I met Kurt May, I met Phil Farber. There were just a bunch of us. And long story short, this group of people that were networking because we were interested in it eventually formed the Veterinary Hospital Managers Association. I was a charter member of that. I was on the board of directors when we actually decided we needed to create a certification program in veterinary management. And, it's just like, so I was excited to be a part of kind of like the genesis of both of those areas.
Wow.
In my career, I was always interested in being a successful practitioner as a doctor, running a practice, and kind of like my niche in practice management became kind of the area of leadership development, team development, and cultural development. And kind of alongside that, 1987, I hired my first business coach and became interested in business and life coaching. So that was another pathway that I think was unique for me. And I still see the need for all of that in veterinary medicine today.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I really think that you exude leadership from the get-go.
Thank you. That's a big area where we connected. I can remember hearing you speak at the Ohio Veterinary Medical Association, and you came into our practice and consulted with us, and it's just like we had a great connection back 20 plus years ago, right?
So I know that you recently had a challenge in your life. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I mean, for me, it started about 2020. It was right around time of COVID. I had noticed that I was starting to develop neurological symptoms, peripheral neuropathy, where there was weakness and stinging and burning in my left leg, especially, and started to develop in my hands. And um,
Now, I'm sorry, in case the lay population
technical
is
terms,
here,
yeah.
what's a neuropathy?
Yeah, it's my nerves weren't working right.
All right.
It's just like it's even that way today. I mean, basically, cold now is pain on my left side.
Wow.
So the signals are all messed up. But essentially, I kind of let it go for a while, thinking it was going to get better. But eventually, um, and this comes to kind of the pioneer conversation. In the area of medicine, I look beyond just what we were taught as Western doctors in veterinary medicine and in human medicine. And I've studied other areas beyond that. And one big area is what they call functional medicine now, where it's not only trying to treat a symptom and give you a drug for the symptom. It's like, well, what's causing all this, right? That's
Mhm.
what functional medicine is about. And with that, they take into account your diet and your environment and your mindset and your emotional state. There's just a lot of facets of what they look there. And so I started working with a functional medicine doctor to try to find out what was causing this. And we did find out that I had mold toxins in my body. I had yeast in my body. I had heavy metals in my body. All of those can cause nervous symptoms, nervous system symptoms. So I started going through the treatments for that, and yet my symptoms progressed. And I started getting lower back pain. And then I found out I had an unstable spine in my lower back and started getting physical therapy for that, but it still wasn't getting better. And eventually I had a neurological exam and they said, you need to get an MRI of your neck. And so I got that. And immediately when the results came back there, they found I had a tumor on my spinal cord in my neck. So it was January 29th of 2021, that I had spinal surgery to have that removed, thinking it was just going to be a benign tumor. It ended up being a malignant melanoma, cancer of the spinal cord. And so, that threw everybody for a loop. Having the cancer diagnosis it's scary. You go into uncertainty very quickly. And what makes my story somewhat unique, Brent, is because I'd been studying functional medicine, I kind of consulted with my oncologist, but also consulted with a naturopathic oncologist and a functional medicine doctor. And so that kind of guided me in my treatment, which in the end was not to do immunotherapy. That was what was recommended by the oncologist, because when you do surgery on the spinal cord, you can't get it all with the surgery, And so malignant melanoma is a bad cancer. I immediately thought of my patients with malignant melanoma and how they might live, 6 months, a year, or something like that. It's a terminal diagnosis. And so I was scared, and yet I did a lot of personal searching and following my intuition and listening to people and taking my time. And I think this is important. I took my time to make a decision what I was going to do and what I was going to not do, because when you get diagnosed in cancer, you get on what I call the oncology treadmill. They're just rushing you into this and this and this. And I told the doctor, I'm going to take my time on this. And I'm glad that I did take my time, because I did not have immunotherapy at this point in time. I'm very humble to say that, people talk about being cancer free. I consider myself lucky to be negative on scans right now. And I know that it could show up at any time, so I think that's
Sure.
important.
And I think
Uh,
it's really important, the audience, that you hear what he said. He said he took some time, in spite of what everybody was saying. So if you're in a similar situation in your life, please take time to listen to yourself.
Yep. Yep. And I think if I have any important part of my message here, and we can talk about it, with how I'm succeeding in this, is I took into account more than just the symptoms and the physical treatment of things. I am treating things in multiple areas. And I personally believe that's why I am having the success. I had my last scan about 3 weeks ago, which is almost 3 years post-op, and I'm still negative on my scans.
Excellent.
Yep.
So, Tim, what is the one success that you have had in the past few years?
I really think, if you look at functional medicine and naturopathic oncology, it's like you got to consider what they call the terrain. You got to consider the environment. You've got to consider your diet. You've got to consider your mental state, your mindset. You have to consider what emotional state you're in. You have to consider, how can you minimize toxicity? It's like my success has been that I'm still negative, I believe, because I've been addressing all of those things. And I think probably the most important thing that I work on minute by minute throughout the day is learning how to create, I'll say the word positive, but an empowering emotional state. So I focus a lot on being grateful every moment of the day, and being in a loving, compassionate place, and being humble, as opposed to being afraid and worrying and that type of thing, because you can go into worry in a nanosecond when you get a diagnosis like this, right?
Yes.
And that keeps creeping back in. It's like the worry. So managing my emotions, I've studied something called heart rate coherence versus heart rate incoherence. And I actually have an app I use to measure my coherence. So I actually get biofeedback on how well am I coherent and in an empowering state. And I really fully believe that's a major part of why I am where I am at this point in time.
Wow. And if you would tell a little bit for the audience, we were talking before the show about, um, we call it in some circles, they will say the n equals one.
Yeah.
Uh, that they're saying basically it doesn't matter what has happened to someone else, it's what happens to you.
Yeah.
And you uh, considered many, many, many factors. Um, and I think a lot of times, many people, many stroke survivors are told after 6 months, you can't heal anything more than you do in the first 6 months.
Yeah. It just, I'll give you a book or two books that I've read, which I think were important. The first one was called Radical Remission, and the second was called Radical Hope. And, they are books that kind of address, it's basically one of the things that I consciously look at, Brent, is if you look at statistics, there's a curve and it's a normalization curve that goes like this, right? And if you look at survivors, thrivers, which is essentially the conversation you have, statistically, you want to be out on the right hand side of that statistical curve. And so, the question is, well, people that have been out there, what do they do differently, right? And so I think that's a valid thing to look at. Those books basically kind of look at people not only with cancer, but she's expanding the audience to autoimmune disease and other areas, other chronic diseases, where, okay, take into account many more facets of how you can be out there statistically and take a more holistic approach to things,
That's
and
beautiful.
yeah, it's just like there's a word called iconoclastic and idiosyncratic. I am unique, idiosyncratic, right? And iconoclastic is, I'm taking a stand for what I believe in, and I'm not afraid to talk about it. And what you said, everybody has their own experiment that they're doing with their health. The N of one, which is what you were talking about a moment ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
And um, I just want anyone who hears us and sees us know that really take what Tim told you. He said he didn't say go be normal. He said you want to go out on the edge of the successful people that have beat uh, your disease, or in my case, uh, for the stroke recovery, I want to always find what works for me and others.
Yeah, what's the unfolding of your unique success story, I think. Because it's evolving. It's always changing, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Well, Tim, we could talk for hours, um, and but do you have a nugget to leave my audience with?
No, I think how this applies to everywhere, what I was talking about in terms of your mindset, how you perceive things, and your emotional state, I think is so critically important in today's world, because we're in what I consider a very reactive world where people are afraid all of the time. And we're being programmed by media to be that way, by social media to be that way. It's just like threat, 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 potential threat, potential threat. It's always there. And that is no way to live life. There is a way where you can consciously shift how you're perceiving things and what you're creating in your own life and the state you're creating, and take control and empowerment by that. And that applies to being a stroke patient, or being, a stroke thriver, or a cancer thriver, or whatever. Take it out of the medical domain and it applies to every part of your life.
Mm,
Yeah.
yes. Um, 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 is there any place where you, if somebody is wants to uh, converse have a conversation with you further, can they reach you?
I don't have a website. If somebody wants to text me, I can give him that number.
Or you can an email if you would
Yeah,
like.
yeah. Banker Tim, BANKERTIM, all one word, at AOL.com. That's my email address.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that. So I'm grateful that you decided to come in and come on and be my guest, um, and um, and you know that um, the process doesn't end, and you make a choice either like the fear-based issue or uh, helpful, hopeful issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
That's
Well,
that's the mindset right there.
it's your choice.
Yeah.
And if you want to learn more about um, Dr. Banker has done, you can email him at bankertim@aol.com.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, and to your success.